Let's change the timing belt and the water pump and all the wheels with it on this Skoda Octavia from 2012 with a 1.6 liter diesel engine. Welcome to the tutorial video on Taffel's Car World. So when doing a timing belt job on your Volkswagen or Skoda or similar, we are pretty much the same engine, you do want to clear a good access space around here so you get good access to all the components down here. And also the same goes on the top. So now we're gonna make some space in the engine bay. So I know I'm using a lift and that will make my life a lot easier, but you can perfectly do this job without a lift. You can use regular jack stands like this one right here and just get the car up in the air, and then you can just put a jack below the engine with some planks below it and you can take it up and down. Of course, since I have the lift, I will use it, and I will also use this rail right here, which will make the job a little bit easier. The timing chain is located on this side, of course, on the front of the engine, and to get access to it, you can see it's quite cramped in here. We need to remove the expansion tank and the fuel filter for diesel and a bunch of other small hoses and connectors, which I will show you in a minute. So I will start by removing this 10mm bolt, this little sensor from the little cap right here, and also there is a little screw which holds the expansion tank right here, and another one down here. And then just snap out all the hoses from this bracket. Once you remove the bolt for this one and the two screws for this, you can also take off the hose here, and you should also remove this sensor. So this one you can actually just pull out when you're taking out the bolt. It's a bit tricky, but it will come out. And then there is this one which holds the two hoses down here. It's these two. You can actually just pull it out. It's a bit difficult to show you when it's on. You can see that there is this little clip or thingy down here. So just spray that one up and be gentle with it and just pull it straight up, and it will come off this little tag you can see right here. And once you've done that, you get a little bit more space, a bit more access. Then we can remove the two bolts, which you can see down here, that one and that one, and then we can actually pull off this metal bracket right here. So once you have the two bolts off, you can remove this one, put it behind here. You should open up this little clip right here. Use a little screwdriver on these, just pop off the top one here. And then it's free. There we go, good access. So before we are going to remove this one, which is now all loose, it's just the bottom hose, which you can see down here. We will try and remove the filter, because then we get a little bit more space. And it sits with two bolts and one nut. There's one bolt on top here, another one on the bottom. They can be a bit tricky to get out without losing them, so be careful. Especially the nut, which is sitting right down there. So when I got out those two bolts and the nut, you have this one free, and you can also remove this plastic thing which hangs on the side here. Now this one is free, and we can pop this out a bit. And well, I already removed one of the diesel hoses here, but you must also remove the other one. And to do that, you actually have to press in. You have to press in on these taps you can see on the sides here. There's one here, and there's another one on the other side. You just push them in gently, because they can break quite easily, and push it down and then up. So that I will try and do on the black one here as well. It actually went quite smoothly on this one, so don't use too much force, just try and wiggle it out, because these are a pain to break. To get this filter all out of the way, we can remove the bolt here, 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 and also another one below this one. And now these pipes are loose and you get a lot more access. You also have to clip it out here. We can pull this one away. Before we pull it all away, we can also take off this hose from this expansion tank. So now the access is really good and we can start to remove this panel right here, and then we can start by removing the engine brackets. So now we have access to the timing belt, but we need to do a little bit more because the timing belt goes around the engine bracket. That's why we need to remove it. So to remove the belt right here, you just need a 16mm, which you can take on this nut right here and then push it up, and then you see you get some slack, and then you need both hands to pull out the belt. Remember to mark the orientation of the belt so you'll put it on the same way as it went off. Screw out these 4 bolts right here. If you have an air drill, they are really easy to just pull out. If not, you just can put on some long extension arms and just really fast snap this one to get them loose without rotating the engine. Now we can start by removing the nut for the pipe, which goes here, and there's another one on top right up here, and then there are the screws for the cover, which is here, 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 and there. 5 bolts. The top bolt on this cover plate here could be a bit difficult to get access to it, so I have removed the 4 other bolts, and also this pipe I will just pop off here so it will be loose. Probably get some water out now. That is okay. Now this pipe is out of the way and it's much better access to the bolt here. Could also remove this engine bracket here and take this cover off later, then you will get even better access. So now we would like to lock the engine in place at top dead center. So if you look at the camshaft drive right here, the sprocket here, you'll see an arrow up. So, and that means that we are at the correct position. You also have to look at the crankshaft, and here there's a tiny little mark at my finger here, and this one should line up with the locking tool, which is looking like this one, and it also has a mark on it below there. You can see the little arrow. So now I have to get this little tag right here into the hole up here, and the line of the tooth here has to mark up with a tag on this one, or the little arrow. And also we have to lock the camshaft with these locking pins. So there you can see that the crank locking tool is perfectly on its mark, which means that the crank is on its top dead center. That also means that we can start locking the camshaft. The camshaft is locked with this one, this little pin. You can also use drill bits, but it's down here. It can be a bit difficult to make it pass through all the holes. Actually, wow, this time it went super smoothly, which means that the timing is perfectly on its mark. There's also another mark on the diesel pump right here, which we need to find. So if I take the phone down here, you can see it. There it is, right between the tooth here, right on that little circle mark. So then we have to put another pin in there. So we can see that the tooth is now almost in there, we just have to push it in. So now we have locked the crankshaft, the camshaft, and the diesel pump, which means that the engine is positioned at its top dead center, and we can loosen the 3 nuts or bolts around this camshaft later to get it easier to adjust everything. But we will not do that yet. We will now start to remove the engine mount. So to remove the engine bracket, you have to loosen these 2 13mm bolts here, and there is 2 18mm large bolts here, a 16mm here, and another 16mm here. After all of these are gone, we can remove this black bracket and the top mount off, and then we can deal with this side plate right here, which sits with 3 other bolts. But before you remove anything of that, you of course have to support the engine. I was planning to use my beam right here, but on this Skoda it's not so easy because you can't really put it anywhere. So I'm gonna show you a way which probably will fit most of you a little bit better, which is just to use a jack to support it with a plate under here to distribute the pressure. And once now I can basically just adjust the height of the engine with that jack, but I cannot adjust the height of the car with my lift anymore, but that's okay. So by removing these 2 bolts last, you can adjust the jack accordingly to make these have the least resistance, and that means that you have it in a position where there is no strain on the engine bracket, and you can easily just take it off. So this is probably the most difficult part of the entire job, and it's to remove this bracket right here. It sits with 1 16mm bolt through here, and then there's another one going through here, which is really difficult to see. I will probably not be able to show it to you. And you just have to get some tools in here, and that's the tricky part, to really get that bolt out. And then there is the third last bolt, which is very accessible right below here. So to get it out, you probably have to play a little bit with the jack to get the engine up and down until you find enough space to actually get this bolt, well, to just get it out. So by jacking the engine up, you can get access to a wrench on this bolt right here. And the same is for this little more tricky bolt right here. When you have the engine up, you can lure your tool in here. This is a 3/8 with a 16mm, and like you can see now, I actually have it on here. So that's basically all the workspace I'm gonna have, and then I just have to push this really hard and get it out. It could be wise to just leave the bolt in here because it's too long anyways, so it doesn't really come out, and that way you don't forget to put it back in when you're installing these brackets. So now the engine is locked, we have full access to the timing belt, so we can start by taking off the belt, and that we can take off the nut to the tensioner. Then we can start by taking off the running wheel if you want to. We will replace them anyway, and of course the water pump, which is below here, which is much easier to remove when the belt is off, of course. I will try and show you the bolts. There's one umbraco here, and there's a second umbraco there, and there's a third umbraco right beside the timing belt there. So now, before we're going to install all the parts, we want to clean the mating surface on the water pump housing, which you can see on the steel surface there. We want to clean that with some nice smooth sandpaper. And that is so the O-ring right here will seal properly on the new water pump. So at this point you are ready to assemble all of your new parts again, and we will of course start with the new water pump, and then we will start putting on these running wheels, and finally we will assemble the timing belt with the tensioner at the same time. So we do have a little bit of hardware here for the well, these are for the camshaft, and these are for the running wheels. So I would recommend you to not save out on the timing belt kit, because this is basically arguably the most important piece on your engine, because if the belt snaps, well, then you will have total engine failure, and you will have pistons crashing in your valves, etc. So don't cheap out on your timing belt. I buy mine. I usually buy gates for Volkswagen cars or Vag cars. I mean, the Skoda is pretty much a Volkswagen, so for Audi and Volkswagen Skoda I usually buy gates, which I'm really happy with. They are really strong and durable, and they are reasonably priced. Another thing you should do before you put everything back together is to just make sure that they actually are replacement components and they are equal. So especially on the timing belts, check that all the teeth are the same by putting the old belt over the new one. I guess you can figure that out yourself. And of course all of the running wheels, that they are actually the same. So everything is back together except for the tensioner, and we are going to put on the timing belt again. I would recommend putting it with the leathers in the same direction as the timing belt spins, so it's easier for everyone to remember. So just thread it in over all of the gears and sprockets, and then we will put on the tensioner a bit later. This can be a little bit tricky. Alright, so the timing belt is now on with everything else, and the important thing to get correctly on this type of engines is that you can loosen the timing sprocket, which I have done here on the camshaft, but you can also loosen it on the diesel pump. That's why you can lock it with these tools, which are so handy. The thing is that you must be very careful that there actually is space between, so there is still adjustment available once you tighten the tensioner, because if there isn't, that means that the timing belt will not have tensioned itself correctly. So as you can see on the tensioner, when I pull it up with this umbraco, it is now on its mark, and if I look at the marks here, they still have space between them on the camshaft, and also the same on the bolts on the diesel pump. So that means that I can now tension this one, put it on its mark, tension this 13mm bolt, and after I've done that I will tension down these bolts here as well, and then I will turn the engine over. So the tensioner is on its maximum because the timing belt is new, and if I push down everywhere on the timing belt, it is super tight, even at the longest span between the crankshaft and the water pump. That means that we are good. Pull out your locking tools. So once everything is back on here, you just make sure that everything can spin around twice, so nothing is crashing and everything is done correctly. And after you spun it twice, you can also check that everything is at the same tension. And now we just have to do everything that we did to get to this point in reverse, starting with putting back this bracket right here. So there, the bracket is in place, and now I can put on the lower cover. Put on the top cover. Assemble the pulley with the tiny center mark up here. And then you just put back the belt again, same way as we took it off. Attach the engine mount. But be careful with this one, because it's not always so easy to get all of the bolts threaded in, so take it in by hand and use the jack or whatever you have to adjust the engine until you get all of the screws into their threads before you tighten everything down. Now put on this bracket again, which sits here. Now it's time to put on this pipe here again, which we took away the last time. Just get it up here, and you also have to put it on the threads on the bottom. Then enter it into the hose and attach it with a screw here. Put back the sensor you have coming from this one. So now we can start assembling all of these hoses and all this nightmare again. And well, just to get a good look at this little clip right here, you can see it's just these on the sides here which actually pops off. So that's supposed to pop on this one. So like that, there you can see it's attached around that little metal bracket. And now we can actually just take this one, put it back in place. Oops. So there the diesel filter is in place, and we get the water hose coming below here over to this side. And now we can just start attaching down these pipes here again. So the bolts are on. Now we can actually attach this permanently, the filter here again, and just be careful because these bolts are quite tricky to get in here, especially the nut, and they are not magnetic, so if you lose them down there it will be a pain in the ass to get them up. That is exactly what I was talking about. Before we attach these diesel hoses right here, we must attach the expansion tank to the water hose, which goes right here, and then we can take this bracket right here which holds all the other hoses, and it's supposed to be on its bolts down here. Really easily get confused with all the hoses here, but these two are gonna sit in this clamp. And then we should bolt this one back together, get the diesel hoses away. They are supposed to sit on a plastic bracket which we will put on here later, and then this one will get on here again. So the diesel hoses, they are just to push down, just you don't need to do anything special. You hear the click there. So now we have this little clip right here, which you can see the slot right here. It's supposed to be threaded onto this one. Can be a bit tricky. Just make a little bit of space. There it goes, and then we can put the diesel hoses into the clips here again. You can pop back the sensor, and then also the return cooling hose onto here. Then put on the screw here and the other one, which is behind it down here. Now we can pop in the washer fluid, just pop it in there and attach the 10mm bolt, which goes into this bracket here. So now everything is back at its place. We are basically finished with the job. Hello there! Looks like I've got myself a new friend. There you go, make sure everything is where it's supposed to be, that you haven't missed a sensor or a bolt or a screw or maybe a clip just like this. So when you make sure that everything looks good, could put the engine cover back on, but I'm gonna do some further work on this. But then you can just start it up, of course. Make sure you also cranked it around like I did when we had the timing belt open and everything. That's pretty much the most important part, so you know everything is, or nothing is crashing internally. So we can start up, and then you have successfully changed your timing belt and water pump and all the accessories with it. So I hope you learned something from this video, and after watching this video you should be able to copy it and change your timing belt and water pump on your car yourself, which could be a Skoda or a Passat, Volkswagen, VAG car, something similar around 2008 to this year right now, 2022. Most of them are quite similar, so I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the video, and it really would help me out if you subscribed and liked and comment the video. So I see you next time in my other videos.